You're listening to Experience This, a show about the emerging experience economy with your host, Tom Young.
Hey, welcome to the show. I'm sitting here outside our studios. Beautiful day with Kieran.
Hey, how's it going?
All right, it's our first outdoor show here at the headquarters.
Yeah, I got my sunnies and my green juice.
Awesome. It's a beautiful day. We call it the Chamber of Commerce Day. This is the, I had to explain that reference to some of the guys. It is the day that the Chamber of Commerce takes pictures.
Oh, right.
Right, because it's so beautiful out. There's hardly any clouds in the sky. It's a little slightly breezy here. We're sitting under our umbrella. Anyway, a lot of things happening. You and I were talking about some ideas about where we're headed with the experience economy. We wanted to have a few conversations around. One of the things we talked about yesterday was the technology that's progressing around artificial video productions.
Yeah.
Using advanced visual effects, neural networks, adversarial networks that are generating some cool stuff. We're going to do a show in a couple weeks on The Lion King.
Oh, yeah.
Have you seen The Lion King trailer?
No, yeah, I know. You told me to see the trailer. I haven't seen it, but I know the effects were...
If we show you the trailer, you're going to be like, what is that? And in fact, Jon Favreau talks about how, and guys, while we're talking here, you can play a little bit of some of the clip parts of the Lion King. You get a sense of it. We'll do a deeper show on this. But they don't even call it animation anymore. But it's not live action, but it's hard to tell.
Wow.
And the technologies that are going into driving this stuff is amazing. So you and I talked about this in the context of experience.
Mm-hmm.
And we have the ability now to start recording oral histories of our elders before we lose them. Right?
Yeah.
Not everybody doesn't live forever. And then to store that for posterity, for one, it's you get some good information if you have an elder professionally interviewed for about an hour, maybe an hour and a half, just to extract information that you might take for granted or you might not get. But if you take some high-res photos for that, we're a few years away from being able to recreate that person. Let's say you have a grandparent who's, you record them today,
right?
And in 2025 they've since passed away, but you can have them meet your child that's born 3 or 4 years from now.
So do you think it's slightly different than... I remember a couple of years ago, there was a Michael Jackson concert.
Yeah.
And they might have done this at a couple of the award shows, too. They used hologram-type technology to bring him back. But this is next level. Because the hologram stuff was kind of cool, I guess, because it was, getting him to do his dance stuff. But
compared to what's going on today, that's a parlor trick.
Yeah.
The stuff that's going on right now wasn't even happening last year. It's really amazing, and when you look at and we're studying how this is progressing rapidly because we have this concept that's out there called deep fakes, and it's going to start. People are going to start questioning their reality very soon about the things they see, whether it be voice, video, or the combination. But what we're trying to do is to say, how do we make these technologies and spin them to the positive side?
Right.
And so, again, it's really recording people. Now Facebook, we had that one thing on the Instagram feed, right? About
so by the year 2100,
right.
Facebook, they say, is probably going to have 1.4 billion users that are going to, pass away by that time.
Basically, everybody's on it now.
Yeah, so basically what they're saying is Facebook is going to essentially turn into a graveyard of profiles.
Yeah.
And there's there's a lot of data, the photos, and I think they kind of have started to convert some of the profiles now, if you let them know, into a memorial with somewhat of a timeline. But there's a huge opportunity there with all the data that they've been collecting.
So again, on our other podcast show, we're going to go into these technologies and get pretty deep on some of them, or at least introduce people to them so they understand it. But I want to talk to you about this, the experience side of it, which is if you had the opportunity to converse with a historical figure, a lost family member, would you want to do it?
So a historical figure, yes. A long lost family member, I would. I just am thinking though, would it be difficult in cases where you've lost a parent at a younger age? Would that be something that's difficult to do, or would you want to bring them back? I don't know the answer to that question. I'm just thinking about it as we're discussing the topic.
I don't think it's a clear 1 or 0 answer here. I think it's going to depend on the situation, because it's important not to conflate the real from the fake or the artificially generated. Yeah,
because that's when we get into the stuff where we always talk about the movie Her, right? Yeah. Conflating the.
But at the same time, if it's an abstraction anyway, so like in the movie Her, and if we're able to grab that clip, that would be great, where the AI generates Alan Watts from all of his videos and pictures, and they generate his voice synthesis and the way he speaks and the way he thinks, and it's conversing with the guy.
Yeah.
That to me is pretty interesting, to be able to have a conversation with somebody and have what they say, the way they say it, and the mannerisms that they say it, to be highly accurate to the reality. The issue is that a bad thing?
I don't think it is.
But would you? People would line up.
I know.
Imagine if you could sit down with, say, just pick a historical figure like Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah.
And have a conversation. Would you do it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, of course you would.
Yeah.
And so the downside is negative. I get the notion of you have a lost family member, and you can slip into a pathology where you start to confuse their real life with an artificially generated one.
Yeah, I mean, I think when grief gets a little too close to the heart, there's probably people that might say, don't know if I can go there. But when you're talking about learning from key historical figures and, just being able to reconnect with the past from a learning perspective, that's so cool.
Yeah. So, and yesterday, I think Apple started their Worldwide Developers Conference. They launched a couple new products. And so, I was looking at that to say, because I'm always looking at these technologies and the progression. I want to understand the technology on one side, but on the other side, for the stuff you and I are talking about, is how will it affect future experiences?
Right.
So, we talked about the notion of creating augmented and virtual reality environments to change, for example, just a dining experience. Imagine you could go into a restaurant that had private rooms, and the walls were software defined.
Yeah.
Where you could say, okay, what do you want to do? I want to be in a French cafe. Okay, here you are. Boom. All of a sudden, around you is a view of a Parisian street. It's sitting there. People are speaking French. The waiter could be in costume, and the food could be, and it's like you're there. Or you could say, no, I want to be on a Star Wars cafe, and it's a Star Wars theme. Or I want to be in a colonial bar from Williamsburg and around the Revolutionary War. You could start to immerse yourself in these environments, and it's right around the corner in terms of the availability to do this in a very realistic way.
And the cool thing about that is not, if you don't necessarily have the financial means to maybe do this, a trip to China, to be able to have access to going to China through the technologies, it would be awesome, because you're almost now making it widely accessible for people to be able to travel the world. And
to sample it.
Yeah.
And so if you think of, now again, purists are going to say it's a bastardization of it, but if you think of Epcot, right, when you walk around the World Showcase, it's an analog representation of the places that you're supposed to be they're visiting, whether it be Morocco. The King of Morocco worked on the design of that place. You have the French pavilion, the UK pavilion, and they're just very. They're good derivatives, but they're not the real thing.
Correct.
But imagine now we go to a digital realm, and it gets much, much closer to the real thing.
Yeah, because it can.
And adds what I think is missing from an analog representation at Epcot, which is a social element that's authentic. And authentic I think that word's going to be tested in the next few years, because what is real and what is fake is going to be, those lines are going to get blurred.
Yeah.
But imagine the line would be out the door at the restaurant that allowed you to sit in a room for a table for 6 or 8 or whatever, and sit in a software-defined environment where you could immerse yourself in another culture, another place, another time. And almost regardless of the cost, it could be double the cost of a fine restaurant. People will wait in line. It'll be amazing.
I mean, I definitely think people are going to be lining up for it. And I think the amusement parks are obviously limited by infrastructure too, right? Because you have to kind of put on this, like when you go to Morocco, I think they have to build the Morocco set. But I mean, in the digital space.
Well, the amusement parks it's a tremendous capital overhead because it's analog. But once you go digital and software defined, the cost comes down tremendously. We went to TJ and I were down in Disney World, and we did a Star Wars virtual reality adventure, and it was a combination of digital and analog.
Yeah. And
we put on these packs, which were basically battery packs with some video rendering. We put on headsets where they overlaid what we saw. So it was sort of a VR AR, but mostly VR, and we held things and we could touch things. So we walked through this maze that was a spaceship, and we bumped into robots. We touched control panels, and you could feel them. And they were there.
So cool.
And you had to touch a door and hit a button for the door to open, and,
yeah.
and you had the sound, and it was immersive. And we went into this. We had to fight. I think it was Darth Vader. He was coming at us. We were at a lava field. They blew heat lamps at us, so you could feel the lava. And it was expensive. I want to say that 20, 30-minute experience was probably, I'm going to pick a number, between $100 and $150.
Wow.
But it was absolutely worth it. It was tremendous. But that's sort of still yesterday's technology. The next thing that's coming is not going to require, the cost is going to come down, and it's going to be more widely accessible. And I suppose the question I want to talk to you about and get a little bit more sense of is, how far will we take this before? Well, I don't even know if I can even finish the question. How far will we take this before people start to say, this, I don't like this, versus I love it?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I mean, sitting down with a conversation with, say, Thomas Jefferson, I'm going to pick a historical figure, or whoever you want to meet with, that's an abstraction to you today because you're learning about them in books or through movies or the internet or whatever you're learning them from, and now meeting them in person or quote in person is artificial. It's got to be good. But I can see how the pathology would be bad if you start to isolate people and it limits their real social activity.
Yeah, because what you don't want to happen is the next. I guess, I mean, we've been talking so much about on our podcast about social isolation, people being attached to the light squares. What would be the worst thing is for that to exponentially increase and people, just be so attached to these oral histories of people. But I think and there's going to be a psychology component, I think that comes along with this, but there probably definitely is a way to solve the right balance of getting a lot more social engagement out of it and increasing the engagement versus, just people kind of hibernating and.
Well, I think the problem with people planting their faces in these light squares, as we would say, the digital renderings, is because of the nature of these digital technologies, they're pre-rendered, they're pre-canned.
Yeah.
So they're not reactive to what you say, and as such, you hanging out with them or spending time on one of these devices is highly passive. Sure, you can click through and you can go this way, that way, and look at this and look at that, but it's static imagery, static video. It's already been pre-rendered, and you're a passive voyeur of these things.
Right.
What's coming is the ability for it to be active.
I was just thinking in my head, I was like, I hope somebody doesn't fall in love with James Dean and Marilyn Monroe all over again.
Well, so this is, we've already had a couple movies where they've taken dead people and they've put them in the movie.
Yeah.
Peter Cushing, and then I believe they did it with Carrie Fisher in the 2 Star Wars movies. And if you knew that they were fake, you could probably tell. But very quickly, you're not going to be able to tell. And so the question is, if you take like an old movie star, like a Marilyn Monroe or a Cary Grant or somebody, James Dean, could they win another Academy Award?
Yeah, that would be wild.
Right? It's possible, right? Mm-hmm. Because we the ability to put their likeness, their imagery, their mannerisms, their voice into a production is not, they can't do that right now in real time. But very quickly they're going to be able to do it in a rendered way, and then very quickly we'll move into real-time interactions. And so when the digital becomes interactive, is it antisocial? I mean, you could say that, like the gaming platforms are highly interactive. People are talking with real people across the network. But is that antisocial? It's isolating for sure.
Well, I mean, it is isolating to a degree if people are just locking themselves, in a private room and they're just totally absorbed into this. There is a social component. I mean, I don't game, but just based on some of the stuff that we've watched, the gaming industry has totally boomed. They now have those conventions and massive get-togethers. There's tons of fans. So there's been this whole subculture that has come out of the gaming scene. But on a day-to-day basis, I don't know. I mean, are people just sitting at home completely isolated further? Like going to work and doing the bare minimum socialization that they have to do, but waiting to get home so that they can just dive deep into the box.
In our studio downstairs, we have the picture of Alan Watts up on the wall, and he has a video called Awakenings that's out on YouTube. You've seen this, right?
Yeah.
And we can maybe play the short clip of this, but he talks about how you have this pathology of people, and he talked about this in the 60s, right? People go home and they sit in front of fake life.
Yeah.
And they live vicariously through others as opposed to actually living life. And I highly relate to what he said, that the sitting back and watching others live through reality TV and the manifestations of sitting on Instagram and other things like that, you are sitting on the sidelines watching other people live. What I'm suggesting is coming is the digital technologies that make you an active participant. It moves from passive to active because of the nature of what's happening. And then the issue is it still a pathology? I want to probably say it probably is at some level, but it's not the same thing.
No, I think it's much more because you'll have to actively participate in that versus just sitting back and being an observer and maybe moving your hands if you're gaming, but you're not really engaging.
Well, I mean, I'm talking about having conversations.
Yeah.
And
it's much more
learning and let's say you and I could do this. You could be in New York, I could be here, and we could have a third person sitting here that's artificial, and we have a real conversation about that. Are we still socializing even though we're not in the same physical location?
Yeah, I think we are. Definitely.
So, again, I think it's going to go back to this issue. It's all going to depend. All these technologies that we're talking about, going all the way back to primitive technology like the printing press with books, all the way up through generative adversarial networks creating, fake videos. The technology in and of itself is not good or bad. The application of it can be good or bad.
Yeah, what did you think about? Because when Oculus came out, they were, in a way,
Oculus is the VR goggles that a company that Facebook bought.
Yep.
Yeah.
I tried it once, and it took us to probably Tuscany.
Uh-huh.
And so I thought that was really neat. I'm like, okay, we got to, stand in this villa in Tuscany and look out into wine country. But that never really took off. And in some ways, I was like, it's kind of fun. You do it once or twice. And I'm sure there's other use cases for it that are much better than what I used it for. But again, that felt very isolated. You have it on. It's your interaction, but you're not really engaging with the technology. However it's used in gaming, I'm sure is totally different. But I'm saying as a layperson who is using the technology. But I think something like this, where you can have discussions with people.
So imagine this. Now, so I take the next version of Oculus that comes out. Let's just pick a time, 3 or 4 years from now. And family members or friends that I have that have passed away are in that villa in Tuscany and are rendered as AI bots in a very realistic way, like indistinguishable from reality. And I put those, I'm working, I'm in my life, and I come home, instead of watching a sports event or reading a book or watching TV or whatever I might do, I put those goggles on and I go to that villa in Tuscany and I hang out with them.
Yeah, I mean, totally different dynamic.
Now, I'm isolating from this 3D world we're in, and I'm going to another world. It's probably a good place to visit, but probably not a good place to live.
Yeah.
So it'll be one of those things, in moderation will be great.
Right.
But overdoing it will be too much. And if the artificial world is so much better than the real world, people will overdo it.
Oh, of course. I mean, I think it's going to be escapism to the next level.
Yeah. So, again, I'm not making a value judgment here other than making a social observation about what might happen. But I want people to understand what's coming down the pike is going to blow you away. And because we're looking at the very front edge of what's happening. And it's actually scaring the people at the front of the curve. Like, you know, we were just joking in the room. We were preparing for another show. And I'm like, this is the end of the world, right? Because these networks these adversarial networks are getting so powerful. You know, these neural networks and artificial intelligence and deep learning is getting so powerful so quickly that, you know, we're starting to actually observe the nonlinearity of progression, which is it's not getting incrementally better. It's getting on a nonlinear basis. So it's like what happened last year is like, that's old school. It's this thing. And then what are we going to say next year? It'll blow this year away. And when you watch things like that Lion King video, you're like, it's come a long way in 20 years. But on a nonlinear basis, in 2 years, what's it look like?
I know. That's what I was just thinking. I mean, next year, right? We can't even imagine what it's going to be.
So the whole purpose of this show is for us, we're trying to hold on to the human element of social and experience, recognizing that these digital technologies are progressing rapidly, and we can co-opt them to make our social and our experiences better, more deeper, more meaningful, richer, all of the above, as opposed to allowing them to basically victimize us and take away the human element of what it is to be a person.
Mm-hmm. Yep, completely agree. And I think that's the piece that people just need to keep in mind as they're continuing to engage with technology, and technology continues to grow at an exponential rate.
Yeah. I want to, you and I will talk a little bit more about how we can start thinking about these oral histories, how we would do that.
Yeah.
I think those are probably interesting things to go do for people. I think, you know, we did some stuff around, and we'll probably do a future show on this with DNA testing and finding long-lost relatives through that. I have some interesting stories about that. That's still unfolding, so we're not going to talk about it yet. But it's very interesting to be able to, for me, to be able to then go and learn about long-lost relatives from the DNA trees.
Well, even I'm just thinking about my case. So there's all this history that took place in All that I'm probably not even knowledgeable about.
So you're Punjabi?
Mm-hmm.
So Northwest?
Yeah, Northwest India. But all of my family migrated over from Pakistan during partition. So, and not just me, I mean, by like the hundred thousands of Punjabis came over from Pakistan. So it's really interesting because all of our great-grandparents were, had all settled in Pakistan and had homes there or lived a life there. So it'd be interesting if you could go back and talk to them about what life was like.
None of them are there anymore?
No, most people have moved. My parents actually took a trip back to Pakistan a couple of years ago. to the area where we're from because they wanted to see what was left.
On a U.S. passport.
On a U.S. passport, definitely. Yeah. And they talked to some of the people that lived in town, and they said that they remember the day that our family had left to go to India, and so it's just wild.
Yeah.
And I was
so
like, wow.
It'd be nice. I mean, just think of the digital technology that could be available for you just to immerse yourself in that for a while.
Yeah.
And learn about your past, where you came from, what it was like in your family, and you think about again what people do to travel.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like people work and they'll take their vacations and they look forward to traveling. It's a big component of their life and their value system. And they invest quite a bit of money to go do these things. And travel is analog. I want to go to Europe, or I want to go to South America or Asia or wherever I want to go to because I want to go experience those things.
Right.
Now we're going to be able to allow people to experience a very realistic replication of it at a very low cost, making these experiences accessible not just to people who can afford to travel to exotic places.
Yeah.
And purists are going to say it's not the same thing. And I'm not saying it's the same thing. I'm saying it's pretty damn good.
Right.
And like for example, if you look at a sporting event, a lot of people say, "Oh, I want to go to the game." I'd rather watch it on 4K TV.
Or what about if somebody says, "Oh, I actually wouldn't mind going to Antarctica," but they probably physically wouldn't make the trip there. But if you can, you have the tech. Yeah, exactly.
If I could wear this shirt in Antarctica, I would go. But I could wear this shirt in VR.
Yeah,
and go.
So I'd go through the digital world, but maybe not physically.
No, but there are places that I probably wouldn't travel to, but I would like to experience.
Exactly.
And imagine just changing the way and imagine we could set up situations, because these business models haven't been set up yet, by the way.
No.
So these imaginations could end up being business models. But imagine you could do these things together with friends, and say, "Hey, tonight, four of us are going to go meet." And we're going to go sit and we're going to experience Machu Picchu.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going there, but I'll go for a night.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, definitely. Very fun.
Yeah, that'd be fun. So anyway, a lot of cool things coming down the pike. It's
Really
going to change the nature of experience, and it's exciting. And what we want to help people do is control the narrative so that they not become victims of this. They look at, because there is a positive spin to all this.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And again, very exciting times.
Very, very exciting.
All right, thanks very much.
See you soon.
All right, see you. All right, bye. Hey, thanks for listening to the show. Karen, I think you were supposed to say that.
Yeah, thanks. I'll take it from here.
All right, well, we got to do this is the new Outcast.
Oh, the outro. The outro.
I think Outcast is a new word. All right, outro. We're doing a new outro. We got to cover a few things.
All right.
One is what? Subscription.
Do you subscribe through?
We want people to subscribe to this, not just listen to it occasionally.
Okay, yeah. Check us out.
The second thing is, nothing's better than what? A 5-star rating.
Always 5 stars.
Got to give us the 5 stars because we get better search outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
And the last thing is comments.
We need those.
Yeah,
we need your feedback.
We want to know what people are thinking. So you can check us out. The best way to do it, if you're not sure, some people don't know how to do it, go to our website. You can check it out. We'll have a full set of instructions. So whatever app you're using. Most people use, what do you use, Karen?
I use Spotify.
You do?
Yeah.
So we have Spotify, we have iTunes, YouTube. There's a whole bunch of, whatever you use, we have it. And if we don't have it, let us know, and we'll try to figure out how to get it.
We can send you a paper-based instruction.
Actually, we do have paper-based instructions, even though that's a fun inside joke to our team. So anyway, Thanks for listening, and check us out on our next shows.
Thanks. See ya.